Welcome to the Perfectly Planted podcast. I am your co-host, Vesame Schwerin. If this is your first time joining us, welcome. If you are part of the Perfectly Planted community, we thank you so much for being a part of it and really are excited. We're very excited for this upcoming show and hope you will too. Daphne, how are you?
Vesame, I'm doing well. How are you?
Hanging in there. Labor Day weekend.
I was gonna, are you traveling?
Yes, see, I'm in a new beautiful studio of a different office. I'm actually enjoying the color. It's a bit of a different shade of blue here. We got to fix it up, I think, but I'm enjoying it for right now.
It's
Yeah, how are
beautiful.
you? How's your
You look
weekend going,
wonderful.
Daphne?
The weekend has been busy. I've been did a long run yesterday. I actually hit 13 miles, and
Oh,
this morning did a walk with Wingman and talked about healthy aging, which we probably need to talk about in an upcoming podcast.
yes.
And also was looking at some recipes for that we can talk about when we start reviewing our next book, which is going to be the wonderful Dr. B's book, Fiber Fueled.
Yes, I'm so excited. I started that book just recently and have enjoyed it, and have bit actually noticed quite a bit of changes in the body and some of the things that have been talked about in the book. So really looking forward to that. We'll be reviewing a couple of the chapters in our next podcast. So really excited about that. I actually also did an Orange Theory fitness workout yesterday. Daphne, I have to give you kudos because the first time I did it, the splat points give you, I think it's an alteration of your heart rate or whatever it is. And the first time I did it, it was like had a lot of splat points. So that meant I was a little less in shape.
Hmm.
And then yesterday I did it and I only got 9 when you're supposed to hit 12. And so I'm like running and racing but anyway, so we're not endorsing Orange Theory Fitness, but if you have gone there, it's elevates your heart rate and reduces it and does a bunch of different workouts. And so it actually was not too bad. I normally I am not. It's more challenging than it was yesterday. So hey, kudos to my wingman for helping me get in shape.
Well, thank you. I just updated your program, so if you,
Something to look forward to.
something to look forward to.
Oh,
We're gonna shred for to get ready for your beach trip.
yeah. And so, also, just going back to your wingman walk with wingman, I've had lots of good feedback. If for those of you who have not found it, go back. You could see some of the recordings. It's awesome. Daphne talks for a few minutes about just really, you're planting seeds of knowledge, positivity, empowerment, Daphne, during these 5 minute skits of walking. And the last one that you did was based off of a ritual podcast with a centenarian. So that was interviewed, and I listened to that podcast. It was extremely enlightening. So,
If only we can all live
yeah,
to be 100 years old.
that's right. That's right.
But talking about lifestyle, because so Mike Fremont, who is the centenarian that Ritual interviewed, one of the key things is that number one, he changed his lifestyle in his late 60s, which is a great. It's never too late to be plant positive.
That's right.
But I am excited to introduce today's guest, who's going to share with you a little bit about his journey and how he became plant positive. So, Dr. Rakesh Jotwani, who is known as Rock by his friends and family, and I hope you don't mind if we call you Dr. Rock. Dr. Rock is a lifestyle medicine physician and an adult internist who practices in San Francisco. Rock has an incredibly interesting story, and I hope he'll share some of it with us today during our conversation. We will post his full bio in our blog post that will be up later tonight or early tomorrow morning. But I did want to highlight a few points for those of you that are joining us live today. Dr. Rock is the son of first generation Indian immigrants, and he was born and raised outside of Chicago. He's amazingly smart and studied neuroscience at Duke University and graduated from the University of Chicago School of Medicine. Somehow or other, Dr. Rock moved from the Midwest to San Francisco for residency, where he trained in internal medicine at the University of California, San Francisco. And the amazing thing is, his training pathway had a specific focus on health disparities, which is something that both Besame and I are very interested in. And his primary care clinic is based at the city's largest county hospital, San Francisco General. But today, what Dr. Rock will share is that after experiencing the power of lifestyle changes in his own life, he wanted to share this with his patients. As we all know, most of us who've discovered this have been wondering, why didn't I know this before? So, to that end, in 2018, he obtained formal board certification in lifestyle medicine and helped establish a lifestyle medicine program at his medical center, where he serves as the inaugural director of lifestyle medicine. Dr. Rock also recently launched a website, and part of his social mission is to help others make lifestyle changes and to transform our healthcare system. His website can be found at rockyourlife.org. We'll put that in the show notes. But more importantly, Rock, welcome to Perfectly Planted.
Thank you so much. It's a pleasure to be here on a beautiful Sunday morning. How are you guys doing?
We're good. Dr. Rock, thank you so much for joining us today and for getting up so early. We know the West Coast is several hours behind, and it's a lot earlier than it is here for us on the East Coast. So thank you so much. But could you tell us a little bit about your background and your plant-based journey, actually?
Yeah, plant-based journey. So I should tell you, I never expected I would, if you had asked me even 7, 8 years ago, that I would be sitting here talking about my lifestyle habits. I would have said you're lying. I I grew up in the early 80s, and as Daphne mentioned, child of Indian immigrants. And um, you ask my parents now and me, and we always say, like, we didn't know sugar was so bad for you. Because I ate, like, sugary cereals and coffee cake and I don't know, all these things, like these Kool-Aid drinks that I would take to school that were just basically sugar water. Everyone did, right?
Yes.
I mean, I think kids actually
Everybody
still
did
take
that.
these things. Kids still take these things. We know now, and it's pretty clear how bad sugar is. But back then, it was sort of marketed like, oh, they're just calories.
Mm-hmm.
And so growing up, I ate a lot of that stuff. I will say my mom cooked meals at home. She cooked Indian food at home. It was very simple Indian food. But and she'd make these great vegetable dishes, but I would always err towards like, oh, can you give me more chicken? Can you give me more kebabs? Things like that.
Mm.
And so then I went to college, and at college, like, there's most colleges, there's these dining halls where you walk in and it's like, you can have whatever you want. And
Yeah.
I would get chocolate cake every night.
That freshman 15. That freshman
That's
15
right.
coming
Freshman
on.
15, freshman 25.
Right.
I would get a glass of whole milk and chocolate cake at the end of dinner every night. I'd be like, and I would get like a burger and fries, like whatever I wanted. And there was a Chick-fil-A on my campus
Oh, wow.
at Duke. There's a, like, right when you and so, and like I'd get burritos, like, and then we'd order food at night. So and I think I learned from an early age that when school is stressful, when life is stressful, oh, you just eat this like really fatty or sugary food, and suddenly you have energy and you feel better, like certainly in the moment. And that didn't stop. I started doing that like consistently in residency. I would stay up late, and then my roommate and we would go to White Castle. White Castle.
Oh, man.
We would go like 11, 12 o'clock. We'd be studying for our anatomy test, and we'd be like, okay, we need to go get something to eat. And it's just that. It was just like, I moved to San Francisco, and I had never lived in California, but we have this thing called In-N-Out Burger.
Yep.
You've heard of that? Yeah.
Yes.
And nearby where I live, there's an In-N-Out that's right next to a Krispy Kreme.
Oh
So
my
I would do my 36-hour
Double
call.
whammy.
I would do, in residency, you do these like crazy shifts, and I would do 36-hour call, and I would drive to the In-N-Out crispy. I would put my In-N-Out order in, and then I would walk over, get my donuts, and then pick up my burger and fries. And that was my life. I got married during residency, and I wanted to lose weight because I wanted to like look better for my pictures and things like that. I had been overweight actually most of my life, even when I was a kid. And I did. I lost 30 pounds in the course of 3 months.
Wow.
And okay, yeah, that's more recent. But yeah, the way I did that was really by just eating half the food. So I was like, okay, I'll go to In-N-Out, but I won't get the donuts. And then running, I didn't enjoy running, but I would force myself to kind of run. My now wife, then fiance, is a runner. And so I said, okay, I want to look good for our wedding pictures. So let's go running. And I looked great. I looked great, I think, for the wedding. And then the very next day, I was in the shower, and food delivery came to the door, and I came out, and my wife said, "Are you having people over?" And I said, "No." And she said, "You've ordered, like, I ordered barbecue, I ordered ribs, I ordered chicken, I ordered mac and cheese, I ordered," and it was enough food for like 10 people. And I said, I've been so good for the last 3 months. I deserve this. And then what do you think? Like in a month, I think I had maybe a month and a half, I had regained those 30 pounds. And then because I was still in residency, and then early into my career, I started working as a hospitalist. I didn't really know what I wanted to do. Hospitalist is someone who takes care of adult patients in the adult hospitalist. Someone takes care of adult patients in the hospital. So people come in with like pneumonia and things like that. And residency sort of prepares you to be that. And so that's a stressful job, though. That's a very stressful job. People are sick, and you're constantly meeting new people, new families every day, and they're very anxious because their loved one is sick or they're sick. And so what do you think? I would come home and eat the food that was just comforting to me. And I, along the way, actually in medical school, I learned, I probably have some underlying mental health issues. I used to go through these periods, like starting in college, where I would just have these like couple week periods where I didn't want to talk to anyone. And I would kind of stay in my room, and I would kind of skip classes. And I was like, that's just something I do. I don't really understand it, but that's something I do. But then I did actually my psychiatry rotation in medical school. And then I was like, oh, that's depression. It's like, anhedonia, you don't want to see people, and you're in depressed mood, and you're like sleeping a lot. And so I did go see someone and started treatment for that. And it was super beneficial. I don't know how I could have gotten through the rest of med school. But that's the sort of thing, like, and I'm sure many of your viewers, so many people have mental health illness, or mental health. That's the sort of thing that, like, it sort of rears its head. Like, you never know. You think things are fine, and then you never know. But that would sort of come up and down and up and down. And I would come home. So then in 2011, we had my daughter. So I have 3 kids. We had our first child in 2011, which is also very stressful, like having a new child. I and that was a hard time for me. And of course, what I always do is I sort of like started eating
Mm.
more and
Mhm.
using food for comfort even
Comfort.
more. I wasn't exercising, aside from the running I did before my wedding. Like, I didn't enjoy that. My knees would hurt, my legs would hurt. Um, so I would just come home, and I was always in this kind of foul mood. My wife would say, we were in a good mood, and then you came home. And she was very blunt about it, because I was very negative. I would come home and I would say, this thing happened, this person said this, I have so many patients. And when you're a hospice, you're sort of on service for like a week. And so as the week would go on, I'd be talking about how hard it was and how I just was
Yeah.
waiting for it to be over. And then one night she said to me, because I used to say this. I used to say, I don't have a choice. I'm so upset and negative and whatever. I complain because at work I have to be collegial. I have to be, you know, uh, uh, I have to be attentive, and that's your role as a physician. Like, you
Mhm.
have to be. And so when I come home, this is finally when I can like unload.
Yeah.
And she said one night to me, she said, how is it fair that the people you love the most get the worst version of you,
Mm.
Oh, yeah.
right? And I didn't have an answer other than, I'm not sure.
Yeah.
I'm not sure. And that's when I'm a big believer in, like, everything happens for a reason. Actually, this morning we were talking. My wife went to college and med school in Chicago too, and we met in Chicago. And she was saying how she had considered so many other. She's from California. She's from the Bay
Mhm.
Area, and she said, I had considered so many other places, and she said, I almost went so and so, or I almost went there, and I said, oh, then we wouldn't have met. And then she said, I know. And then we wouldn't have met, and then we wouldn't have had these three wonderful children. And I said, everything happens for a reason, right? Everything happens for a reason. So at my hospital, they require us to do these extra hours outside of work every year, like 10 hours of um, physician education time. And one of the offerings that year was this session run by Physician Wellness, which I wasn't even active in back then, but it was called Evidence-Based Workplace Happiness.
Mhm.
And it was all the things you can do to be happier on a regular basis. And I saw that, and they were offering an hour or 2 hours of credit and also dinner. And so I said,
Any In-N-Out
sounds
burgers in that
good.
dinner?
That's right.
You're like,
Although, Besame, and Daphne, you may agree with the hospitals notoriously offer the
Bad food.
worst
oh yeah,
food
no, I know. Nope, I
to the
know.
Yeah.
patients, to the
Yep.
doctors. I
Oh
mean,
yes.
every day we had conferences, and they would get takeout. They would get
Pizza.
Chinese food,
Yeah.
pizza.
Yeah.
Exactly.
It's an
Chicken
issue on
wings.
its own for sure.
And
I
that's what
know.
it was. It was probably, I think it was Thai food that night, and it was like, you name it. And I love these foods from different cultures and different ethnicities, but most restaurants, they load it up with salt and oil, because
Yeah.
Mhm.
that's what makes the food, enjoyable in the moment. And then anyway, so evidence-based workplace happiness, they had us do this thing at the time, which I thought was a little strange. They said, I want you to pull out your phone. And so we pulled out our phones, and they said, text someone, text or send an email to someone at work that you appreciate, and tell them why. And so I had an office mate at the time, this guy Ray, and Ray is like 20 years senior to me, and just give me a lot of advice. Being a new physician, he would give me advice on clinical advice, and he also had 3 kids, and he'd give me parenting advice, and I had become a friend of mine. So I just sent him a short message. I said, I really appreciate you being an office mate and becoming a friend of mine and mentoring me. And then I put my device away, and then they asked us, how do you feel? And I said, I feel better. I feel good. I feel happy.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, what is this little magic trick that we just did? You know, it's like, and I didn't realize that there were these things I could do, that maybe happiness is a choice.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
You know, I go back to that word choice because I remember telling my wife, I don't have a choice.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
I'm in this negative headspace because I don't have a choice. So I say all that. I know that's kind of long-winded, but that in that moment, I became very open to the rest of that evening. And one of the things they talked about was meditation and mindfulness meditation. And actually, I grew up Hindu, and meditation is a big part of the religion, but I wasn't very religious. I would do a lot of traditions that my parents had us do, but I didn't really connect with them. But I always had sort of this spiritual connection with the sense of God or the universe, and I explored that a lot in college. But meditation is something I had never really done consistently. And so I downloaded the Headspace app because that was their recommendation. And I just started using it. I started using it in the car, actually, because I would pull over to the side of the road near my home, and I would just do, it's 10-minute sessions. I would do 10-minute sessions, and I'd do a book. Either of you meditate?
I have the Headspace app. Yeah.
That's right.
I try.
Well, yeah, no,
I try.
that's why it's a practice. I
Yeah.
talk to my patients all the time, because when I first started Besame, it was like, I didn't want to do this. I was like, why am I doing this? But I just kept remembering that text message I sent to Ray and how I felt better. And that something needed to change. If I wanted to live the rest of my life just feeling unhappy and coming home and feeling negative, and meditation isn't this sort of like magic bullet where you suddenly like do it and then you feel much happier. What it made me realize was that again, I go back to choice, that when I was walking into the house, I was choosing to be that way. I was choosing to react to my day in such a way, and I was taking it out on my family.
Right.
And so that 10 minutes just gave me a pause to sort of almost let go of that and sit with that, and then decide that when I was going to walk in, I was going to be more present with my kids. And then that was a very small change, right? 10 minutes, literally 10 minutes in the car. And, but within a few weeks, my wife said something to me. I didn't tell her I was doing this. I just, this was my sort of secret plan to try and improve my sense of well-being. And she said, something is different about you. And I said, what do you mean? And she said, well, you're just more positive when you come home. Not as just more positive. She said, you're not, well, you're just more present. You're just more present. And I said, yeah, that's I'm trying to do that. I'm working on that. And she said, you're also coming home late.
Later. 10 minutes later than normal.
What are you doing?
Blame yourself.
I'm meditating in the car. And she was like, what are you talking about? No, she's like, what is that? And I showed her the app, and it tracks your progress. And I said, no, look, you can see. And even back then, she and I both grew up in households where our parents would yell a lot. That was kind of the way we were reared, and both of us kind of had that reactivity even then with our children. And she said, okay, whatever. But she now regularly meditates as well. I think we both learned that it gives you this new opportunity in life to reflect and respond in a way that you stop reacting to all your thoughts and to everything that happens to you, and then you can take this pause. In those sessions, I started reflecting on the other choices I was making in life, and clearly I was. It didn't feel like it, but I was reacting to my stress with all this food, and then I was coming home to these small children who I would look at and I'd say, is this the father I want to be? Like, if I fast forward, I'm going to be one of the patients I take care of in the hospital. And again, it wasn't like easy choice, but universe has this way of connecting me with the right thing at the right time. And then there was this doctor from Sacramento who came to our medical center. He was going medical center to medical center within our hospital system, telling his story that when he was 40, he started having chest pain. He was dropping his 2 young kids off at school. And he drove himself to his emergency room, and they did an angiogram where they looked in the vessels of his heart, and he had 2 blockages, and he was 40 years old. And nobody talked to him about how you should eat. He went on the American Heart Association diet, which emphasizes like lean meats and more vegetables and things like that, but exercise and olive oil. And he did all that. And then 6 months later, he was at the gym exercising, and he started getting chest pain again. And they went back to the hospital. They did another angiogram. His stents had closed off. Ouch. He had more disease. At that point, he had more disease, and they had to do bypass surgery. When he was
so
41.
He had progressed.
Yeah, on the American Heart Association diet, he had progressed. And he was 41, and he asked himself, he said, this isn't the life I want to live. Like, what can I do? And so he did his own review of the literature, and then it became very obvious to him very quickly that we've known for decades that a diet that consists of whole unprocessed plant food, that a whole food plant-based diet has the power to reverse heart disease. And he said, when he learned that, he said, why has no one told me this before? Why didn't my doctors tell me this when I had my first episode 6 months ago? And he made it his mission then to go to and this was before we were Zooming. This was in 2015. So he was driving across Northern California to give this Grand Rounds talk, where he would tell the story and then he would present some of the research. And I was sitting in the audience. I was 35, and I looked at him and I said, "This is me. Like, this is I'm going to be this in 5 years. I'm going to be this in 5 years." So he encouraged all of us to eat this way for 3 weeks. And it took me a year to build up the confidence to do that. I say that because when he first said it, I said, that's impossible. That's impossible. Like, how does someone eat this way? How do you cut out meat and cheese and all the things I was eating at every meal? And so what I did do is I started eating plant-based on Mondays.
Meatless Monday.
Meatless Mondays.
Meatless Mondays.
Yeah.
And which, by the way, I don't say meatless Mondays anymore. I say plant-based Mondays, because meatless, it emphasizes what you're removing. Right? And you, Daphne, and you're both shaking your head. Yeah, because we know that when you do that, it's not as effective. It's not emphasizing all the good things that you bring in.
Right.
So
it's shining the light on the bad.
That's
what are you adding in, not what you're removing.
It doesn't sound as good, but I call them plant-based Mondays now.
No, it's good.
Yeah. So I did plant-based Mondays for a year, and those Mondays were like my training ground. Like, I'd be like, okay, I want to eat this way. Clearly, it's what's best for me. Clearly, it's what's going to prevent me from getting a heart attack in 5 years. And I don't want the rest of my life to feel like a punishment. I don't want every meal that I sit down to feel like, uh, you know, what am I missing? Why can't I
Mhm.
have that?
Or this is what you have to do, you
That's
know?
Mhm.
right.
It's
That's
yeah,
right.
not your
That's
choice.
right.
This is what I
It's
have to do. That's a different mentality. Yeah.
so then I
That's a
started
choice.
exploring.
Yep.
I was like, well, what do people, thankfully I'm not the first person to eat this way, right? So I found online that there's so many people who have re-engineered their favorite recipes. I'm
Mhm.
fortunate that I used to watch my mom and then learn from my mom how to cook. And then when I went off to school and then was working and things like that, I very much enjoyed simple cooking. So
Mm.
that came in very handy. Of course, for me, cooking was always like, what's the piece of meat I'm gonna have? Like, am I
Right.
gonna roast a piece of
That's
pork, or am I gonna sear a steak, or am I gonna?
yeah,
You
that's the
don't even
main
want to know.
character. Yeah, that's the main
That's
character is
right.
always the meat, and then it's a supporting. Well, what if you take away the main character? Now all the supporting is your main, you know? Yeah.
So after a year of doing that, I found, oh, I can make lasagna, but I can use
Mhm.
tofu as the
Mhm.
ricotta, and I can make, tacos, and we can put black beans and sweet potatoes as the filling, and all these things I was really enjoying. And I was like, okay, I think I can do this for 3 weeks. And so I did it for 3 weeks. The medical center sponsors a plant powered challenge, which I have now renamed the Plant Powered Opportunity,
Oh,
Not
because
a challenge.
not a
that's
challenge.
right.
Yeah.
I mean, challenge implies this is going to
Yeah.
be hard,
Right.
and
Mhm.
I always tell people when we do it annually, I say this is an
Mhm.
opportunity to feel good, opportunity to experience what it's like. Why do it? I tell my patients, why do it for 3 weeks, 100%?
Mhm.
When I don't tell everyone, when I tell them you should eat this way, that, oh, you should do this 100% of the time. Um, uh, Certainly people would benefit, but so many people would benefit from eating 80% of their diet uh,
Mhm.
whole and processed plant food, 90% of their diet whole and processed plant food. And for many people, that 10%, that 20% that wiggle room is what makes it sustainable for them, right?
Mhm.
Mhm.
So, but why do it for 100% for 3 weeks? Or as the doctor who came to visit us, he calls it going Olympic. Um, it's because then you experience what it feels like. If you've been like me, if you've experienced like sluggishness and fatigue and I would say depression and all the things that food was making me feel for so many years that I was wholly unaware of. I was so unaware of how much food was affecting my energy levels and my
Mhm.
sleep. Then I said, okay, I'll do this for 3 weeks. And I didn't expect that after 3 weeks, I would feel like a different person.
Mhm.
And, I went to the doctor because they encourage us before this plant power challenge. We encourage everyone, go get your labs checked,
Mhm.
go get your cholesterol checked. I had not seen my doctor at all. And
Doctor, heal thyself.
that's right. That's right. And sometimes doctors, we say this all the time, we're the worst patients.
Yep.
I just saw somebody in my clinic. It's one of our surgeons, and he hasn't been to the doctor in 10 years. He hadn't
Oh,
been to the doctor, and he told me, he's like, yeah, yeah, yeah. He's like,
Yeah.
yeah, I need it to come. And so, I got the labs checked, cholesterol high,
Yep.
went to clinic, blood pressure high, um, pre-diabetic. Um, and my doctor put on we call it in medicine, we call it a problem list, which is like
Mhm.
all the medical issues you have. And he put on my problem list obesity because my weight was high enough that I met criteria to have obesity. And I hadn't even weighed myself in a few years because
mhm.
at that point I was sort of like, didn't like looking at that.
Mhm.
And all those things, I said, okay, well, this is the reality. Now, meditation had taught me, don't just run away from these things, that these are true and you have a choice. And so for 3 weeks, I ate whole and processed plant food, and it wasn't a punishment. I said, okay, Monday, we're going to have tofu and veggie fajitas. Tuesday, we're going to have, I had a whole meal plan. And then after 3 weeks, my bad cholesterol, the LDL dropped 40 points.
Yeah.
Wow.
After
It's
3
amazing.
weeks, my blood sugars normalized. After 3 weeks, my blood pressure normalized. And I was a believer, I'm not right away, actually. I tell you, my birthday came up a month later. You were mentioning Dr. B, because I heard him, I think, on another podcast. He was describing something similar after he had started eating plant-based, and then he went to a steakhouse. I also used to love going to steakhouses. That's what I just did. It was like, it was my birthday. Of course, that's what I'm going to do. And I told my wife, I've been so good. I've been so good the last 2 months. Let's go.
Yeah.
And I just remember that meal so vividly, because I was almost like disillusioned. Like, I was eating and I was like, this is good. And then
But
I was
not
eating, but not great.
Mhm.
And then that night I didn't even realize, like, I had terrible heartburn.
Talk back to you. That meat talked back to you.
And yeah, it was my body.
Welcome back.
It was like, it came back with a vengeance. Like,
Yeah.
I couldn't sleep that night. Like, it came so bad that the next morning I felt like hungover.
Yeah.
And then I remember saying to my wife, I was like, I don't think I'm ever gonna go to a steakhouse again. I don't think I want to eat that food anymore. And I was she was looking at me, and she's sort of like, this is, who are you? And I said, I don't know, but this is, and then I just kept going. And over time, I was like, that's the food. That's the food. I realized that, yes, food should taste good. At a baseline, like, you should enjoy your food. Food is one of the pleasures of life, and each meal is an opportunity to affect how you feel. Right? Each meal is an opportunity. It's not just how you feel in the moment. When I would eat that In-N-Out cheeseburger, the Krispy Kreme, like, it certainly felt good in the moment. But then I started asking myself, how am I going to feel an hour after the meal? How am I going to feel that night? How am I going to feel the next day? And how am I going to feel years from now from eating this food consistently over and over and over again? And then I just kept going, just said, if I can find more and more ways to eat this food such that it tastes good and I enjoy it, then that's it. And it's good for me. That's a win-win. I'm just going to keep doing that. Okay. I'll stop there.
No, that's all really good. I guess, as a healthcare provider, I mean, what are some of the messages that you give to your patients? Because I'm sure you see this day in and day out also. And now that you know, or have an experience tied to it, and also, I mean, mental illness and mental health is a whole separate, but it's sort of tethered into this broader, because lots of people eat emotional eating.
That's right.
And filling that void inside of something. And so, it's just that snowballing effect. And so what are some of the things that you share with your patients when they come in to slowly inch them? Because, I'll tell you, if somebody came up to me to say, you need to go 100% plant, I'd be like, you're crazy, because, eating meat in our meals is so ingrained in our culture that it's such a drastic change. So what are some of the small changes and advice that you give to your patients?
That's 100%. So first I try to find out what's important to them. And this, by the way, is, this kind of came to me I do run now, again, interestingly. And so this came to me, like, because I love, I don't know if you know this app. It's a free app Nike puts out. It's called
the Nike Run app?
The Nike Run Club app.
Yeah.
And they have the mindful running. mindful runs with Andy
With
from
Andy
Headspace.
Puddicombe.
And those runs are life-changing. I mean, every time I do one of those runs, I have these revelations and insights. And I was out for a run with a Headspace run, and I've been thinking, like, I want to share this information more, share it on a website, and how am I gonna? And anyway, we can get back to that. But my name, since I was a kid, my name is Rakesh, but my brother and my cousins, and then many of my friends would all start calling me Rock. And so Rock, short for Rakesh. And then I had come up with this idea of having a website called Rock Your Life. And one of the runs, I said, oh, maybe each letter could stand for something. That's the way, like, things gravitate with people. And I didn't know what the letters were going to be, but I thought about, like, how did I make change,
Mhm.
and how do people make change? And it
Yeah.
usually starts by recognizing that you have some bigger goals and aspirations in your life.
Mhm.
It doesn't actually start with the physical change, because our current system works like this. Our current healthcare system, some patient comes in, and, like, my doctor, for example, when I came in, said, oh, you have high blood pressure, you have high cholesterol, and just tells you that these are the circumstances, and then says you need to do X, Y, or Z. Oftentimes, because the visits are so short, X, Y, or Z is, we have this medication for your cholesterol, we
Yeah.
have this medication
Yep.
for your blood pressure, right? Which doesn't treat, you're shaking your head, this, it doesn't treat the root cause of the disease. Even if we tell patients in that moment, if I see a patient who has prediabetes or high blood pressure, and I tell them, you should make lifestyle changes, and
What does
you
that
should
mean?
change your diet, and you should, that adds to their overwhelm.
Right.
Most people got in that situation because there's a lot going on in their life. There's a lot of stress in their life. And now you're saying, you gotta do
Change your
things
life.
differently.
Yeah.
You gotta change your life.
Yeah.
And they're like, how can I change my life when my life is already overwhelming and stressful? And so, there's this then exhaust cloud that sort of forms, right? Because they can't necessarily do what you're telling them to do. And they may take these medications, but then the medications don't treat the root cause of the disease, so they tend to get worse. And then, the cycle sort of repeats itself. I will say that's also, I think, why there's a lot of burnout in the medical professions, because we see people, so many people go into health professions because they want to help people. They want to help people get better. And we give people these treatments and medications that don't actually treat the underlying disease. And then people get worse, and we feel that exhaust ourselves.
Mhm.
What if you started with what's important to you? So one of the questions I ask all my patients when I first meet them is, why is it important for you to be healthy? What is your why?
Mhm.
And they will tell me, they will say, I want to see my grandkids grow up. I love traveling. And I want, my wife and I are just retiring, and we want to keep taking adventures together. And, I have my sick mother who I take care of, and she's very dependent on me, and I don't want to be in that situation when I'm an old. So whatever the reason, so many people have reasons. I want to write a book. They have these bigger goals in life. And then suddenly we start talking about that. And I ask them, what are you doing right now to get you there? And we talk about their health in context of that. And then they start asking me, they're like, Doc, what can I do to maintain my independence? What can I do to see my grandkids grow up and go to college and get married and all these things.
Mm-hmm.
And when they start asking that, then I start telling them, well, we've known, and I love to talk about the blue zones. You mentioned that.
Yeah.
I heard that interview with that centenarian on just the other day in the car, actually, on Ritual. We know that, and I tell them, the longest living people, they have strong family connections. They do
Exactly.
some sort of prayer or meditation every day, and they move their body as a regular part of their life. And they eat 95% of their diet, this whole unprocessed plants. They eat some meat. They eat it on special occasions. They use it as a condiment. And so then we say, okay, I say to them, that's the punchline, so to speak. Like that's where, if you want to grow old gracefully, live a long time, free of chronic disease, we know that. And I point them in the direction of, depends on who it is. If it's a younger patient and they might gravitate towards, the Game Changers, that documentary, I send them a link to that. If it's a patient who maybe won't, I send that to a lot of patients, but there are other documentaries. I send Forks Over Knives. Now you can get the documentary for free on the Forks Over Knives website. It's older, but it's still a very good documentary.
Mm-hmm.
And I've created all these, short little phrases that I send my patients, little resources. And I tell them, the goal is not for you to go from 0 to 360 tomorrow.
Right.
I tell them about my experience. I say, but, if I'm being honest with you, if we can move you in that direction, then you're going to have the life that you want to live.
Mm-hmm.
And that's when we layer in the next piece, awareness. Mm-hmm. So I talk to a lot of my patients about meditation. So many patients, I tell them, I give them this analogy. I say, if you're pushing a cart and it had square wheels on it, you'd be like, this cart is so hard to push. Like, it's so, it doesn't matter what's on it. The cart could have nothing on it, but the cart is just going to drag through the mud. And I say meditation is kind of like putting round wheels, replacing those square wheels with round wheels. It changes the experience of everything. Suddenly your experience from moment to moment is different. And you start looking at your relationships with everyone and everything differently, and your relationship with your thoughts and with the people you care about and the people you meet. And if you can layer in that awareness piece, then you start reflecting, just like I did, on your choices and asking yourself, do I want to eat this because, we all eat for so many reasons. I have this mnemonic I share with patients called breath. And it's, when you're reaching for something to eat, is it because you're actually hungry, or is it because you're bored? Mm-hmm. Or you're responding? R is responding to some really strong emotion. I'm forgetting it, but E is something. A is anxious, and T is tired. Because when you're tired, you're going to reach for high calorie food, or and H is habit, because we often just reach for food at certain times of the day because that's just what we're used to doing. Mm-hmm. And so ask yourself, why are you reaching for this? And then also ask yourself, okay, I'm reaching for this bag of chips, and I have like carrots and hummus or peppers or something that are also crunchy and maybe satisfying. Mm-hmm. So awareness is that sort of second piece. So before I even start talking to them about changing things, I say, I want you to become more aware of what you're doing every day. Mm-hmm. Why are you eating what you're eating? Why do you enjoy the food that you eat?
Right.
Mm-hmm. What is it that you enjoy about what you eat on a regular basis? Is it the textures, the flavors, the traditions? Because then when we talk about change, And K is the last piece, is kindness.
Yeah.
And kindness is how we make change.
Mhm.
And I go back to my wedding, that was not being kind to myself. I was just restricting the amount of food I ate and forcing myself to do something that I didn't enjoy.
Mhm.
And it worked up until I took those photos on my wedding day, and then the very next day I said, I'm not going to do that anymore.
Mhm.
And so many diets are they're framed as punishments. They are, how do you restrict yourself? How do you, and I know now from, my own experience and working with so many patients, is punishments aren't sustainable.
Right.
They'll only work up until a point where you're like, you know what, I don't want to punish myself anymore.
Yeah.
And I call them kind changes. Kind changes are ones that that are that are that feel good. They feel good, and they're also good for you. So then you find the food, like those black bean and sweet potato tacos. You find the food that is good for you and also delicious
good.
Yeah.
and tastes good and also is easy to put together.
Yeah.
Right.
If I have to spend 2 hours making this elaborate meal, I'm not going to do it. Exactly. So that's, and then I say, what are the small things that you can do? I ask them very, how much plant food are you eating? And not shockingly, so many
It's
people
not
don't
much.
prioritize eating plants.
Mm.
Like, it's just not on their radar. They don't.
Mm.
It's not that they don't enjoy plants. I focus on that. I'm like, what fruits do you enjoy? What vegetables do you enjoy? And they can usually come up. I had one patient last year. She said, I don't like any vegetables, like any. And I was like, really, any? And then but I learned actually recently. I think it was in Fiber Fueled, or Dr. B was in an interview, and he said that that your taste buds actually change.
Change.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, as your gut biome changes, your taste
Yeah.
buds actually
Yeah.
change. I've experienced that,
Mhm.
and so I tell them that too. I say, well, just start eating, be intentional about eating these foods that you like
Mhm.
on a regular basis, and then we come up with a frequency in which they're going to do it. And then I try to have close follow-up with them, because in our system, like, the visits are very short. So
Yeah.
um, uh, and that's what I'm doing, in my work. I'm trying to create pathways for people, resources, classes,
Mhm.
multi-week classes, resources for people, because I strongly believe that lifestyle medicine won't become, as popular as the pill form of medicine until we make it as easy to prescribe
Right.
as pills, until a doctor can say, oh, okay, you have diabetes, let's have you go through this diabetes reversal program. And
Mhm.
it takes them 30 seconds to put that order in the computer, just like it takes them 30 seconds to put that order in for diabetes pills. And
And Rock, we love your energy and enthusiasm, and we're going to have you back on because I think this could be a 2-hour
oh,
conversation.
sure, sorry, we're
No,
probably out
No,
of
it's
time.
no,
really good.
no. But I mean, to your point about what you're doing, and the one thing that Besame and I, one of the fundamental whys for us having this podcast is we want to plant the seed.
Mm,
Time to grow, but how do we, what can you share today to plant the seed early? Because we want to keep people out the doctor's office. We don't want
that's right.
them to have to get the
That's right.
prescription for the DPP, the
That's
diabetes
right.
prevention program.
That's right.
What seedlings can you plant that may help someone listening
That's right.
stay healthy?
That's right. Well, it's. I'll go back to my namesake, is ask yourself, what's important to you in this world? What's important to you in this life? I've had some recent. I mean, our being in healthcare gives you a lot of perspective, but just life gives you a lot of perspective.
Mhm.
I say recently, a couple months ago, a mentor of mine from training committed suicide.
Oh.
And yeah, very, very sad. And when when I met him, um, over, yeah, more than 10 years ago now. I think my wife was pregnant, and we were going to have our first kid. And one thing he said to me, he said, we undersell, as parents, we undersell children. He said, everyone always complains about it, but children do this magical thing. They cause you to stretch yourself in ways that you didn't imagine you could stretch yourself. And he said, I signed up to be a soccer coach for my sons, and I've never played soccer before. And he said, and it's so wonderful. He said, I'm learning so much, and I'm doing all these things that I never expected that I was going to do. Which, by the way, I signed up to be my son's soccer coach, and I've never played soccer before. And we had our first practice last week, and they're 6 and 7 year olds. So thankfully, there's not a lot.
Well, Dr. Rock, listen, my husband is a soccer coach, so he played soccer, so he could give you his practice plans for 6
I
and
probably
7-year-olds.
need it. I'm probably stressing out about it. Like tomorrow, I'm
don't
gonna
stress out. It's
have
all
a
fun.
practice, and I'm like spending a couple hours like reading the book. And but you ask yourself, what's important to me in this world? I mention all that because life is short, right? We don't know what's going to happen tomorrow. We don't know what's going to happen next week. In meditation, we reflect on this a lot. Is all we have is this moment. And in this moment, ask yourself, like, what's important to me? And what's the type of person I want to be? You can really frame this sense of your aspirational self-identity, and then you start making choices that align with that identity, and that feels really good. I think many people don't feel good because they have some sense of the person they maybe want to be, but they're not actually living that way. And so on a regular basis, they're seeing evidence of the contrary, and that actually doesn't feel good. So if you can become more aware of what's important to you and what's your sort of bigger aspiration, and then on a regular basis start making choices that live up to that. And those choices may be very small at first. You may be the type of person that wants to be independent when you grow older. Well, then you back up and reverse and say, okay, well, what do I need to be doing today to be that person? And if I want to be independent when I'm older, then I need to be moving my body regularly today.
Yeah.
And if I'm not, then what is the small thing that I can do to move my body in a way that feels good? I'm fond of saying movement instead of exercise, because for many people, exercise feels like a punishment and a chore. Because you're right. And you both exercise regularly, move your body regularly, and now I know now it's not a punishment. If you do it regularly, it's actually a gift.
Yeah.
It's actually this opportunity to feel good every day. And so I tell them that. I say, let's reframe it, and then what is it you like to do? And some people love to dance. Yep. And I say, wonderful. Then how are we going to make you, get you dancing 3 or 4 times a week? Because you love it, and you move your body, and your heart rate gets up, and you get all these benefits, and you feel good. Or is it just, going for a walk, but say, how can you elevate that walk? Schedule it with a friend, or listen to a really good podcast, and so suddenly that chore becomes something that you really want to do, because you're meeting up with someone that you really have great conversation with. And so that's it. And then don't worry about how am I going to get to that big result? How am I going to lose 30 pounds? Because the results will come from the small daily actions, right?
you get to work out. That's one thing that I've learned, and some of the coaches that I've trained with have said, it's not I have to, I get to do this for myself. I get to do this for my, to better my body, my mind. And I think it's just been it's just that mental framework that we have to just slowly adjust from the habits that we've formed over the years to now. So in this moment, I'm very grateful for you, Dr. Rock, for joining us today. Thank you so much for taking time
You're
out of
very
your day. And
welcome.
we would love, I actually have a whole nother list of questions. So we would love to have you back.
I would love to come back.
We would love to have you come back and join us again for
That'd be awesome.
another podcast, because it's been very enlightening, and to hear your journey has been very inspiring as well. So thank you so much. I know a lot of people can relate to where you were and where they could be and where you are right now. So thank you so much.
Oh, you're very welcome. Yeah, you're very welcome. And we didn't even get to talk about it, but Daphne and I know each other through the American College of Lifestyle Medicine.
Exactly.
We both are on a member interest group called HEAL, which is Health Equity Achieved Through Lifestyle. And we didn't even get to talk about health equity, but so much of this work is looking at our society and our population and how everyone can be healthy. And when you start looking at that, you realize that in order for everyone to be healthy, people need access to healthy food.
Yeah, they do.
People need access to safe spaces to exercise. And so I've been so blessed to be connected with people all over the world through that group. And Daphne leads a subgroup that we're working on, like materials, handouts and things like that we can give to patients. And so we get I get the privilege of getting to see her once a month for that. And that work has been really, really cool part of my life too.
That's so lucky. I'm jealous of that. You get to see Daphne once a month.
We love it when Rock joins the calls, because you live it every day. And the beautiful thing, and when I first heard your longer story, the reason I was so excited to have you join Perfectly Planted is because you've been on that journey. And it wasn't one day, 1 month, 1 year, but the fact that you are able to share with the community, with your patients, with your family, all of the pearls that you've learned, and that you practice in a community that definitely will benefit from all of the messages you share. That's why I think what everything you have to say is so important, and why Rock Your World is going to be so impactful. So
thank you.
We are going to have to schedule more time to talk about. We want to talk about health equity. We would love to hear some of your favorite recipes.
That's right. Let's book it. We'll do it in the next couple months. People can go to Rock Your Life, RAKYOURLIFE.org, and sign up for hopefully we'll start soon, kind of regular newsletter and kind of regular updates to that website.
I love that.
You can also find me. I'm not regular poster on social media, although hopefully that'll change in the near future. But you can find me on Instagram at Rock Your Life, RAKYOURLIFE. And it was a pleasure and a privilege to be a guest today. Thank you guys so much for letting me share.
Yeah, no, thank you. Once again, thank you. And thank you to all of our viewers with Perfectly Planted and joining us for another Sunday Seedling. We hope you enjoyed it. And if you did, please go ahead and hit that like button or subscribe on YouTube. And like Dr. Rock said, you can find him on Instagram at Rock Your Life. And also you can find us on Instagram at It's Perfectly Planted. Or Perfectly Planted on Facebook. And then we always have our blog post on perfectlyplanted22.com. So thank you all so much for joining us. And until next time, Daphne,
be well.
Be well.
All right. Have a great day, guys. Take care. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.